Croeso I bysgota Cymru. Welcome to Fishing in Wales.
You know, angling means different things to different people, but for me it's the memories I take from it and also the sense of adventure I get from it. As a small boy wandering along, just trying to catch anything at all, chasing these little fish with jars and nets. And then as I got a little bit older, walking along riverbanks, casting to wily fish, or travelling to massive lakes overseas, trying to conquer enormous carp. It's all an incredible adventure, and that's what today is about, because just look at the scenery around me now. This is just indescribable. It's a wonderful place to be. We've got fantastic weather, and you can see behind me this glorious waterfall. Now, up this path leads to a beautiful mountain lake. In fact, there's a few of them up there, and they contain fish, almost certainly trout, possibly perch, we don't know. But today is all about adventure and taking some memories. So me and a gang of my mates, we're heading up there to some of the highest lakes in Wales, just to see what's up there and see what we can catch. Now then, I spend a reasonable amount of time in places like this all over the world, and one of the things you've got to think about is a little bit of safety first. It's not just a case of wandering up into the hills and having a nice day out. You've got to do a little bit of preparation first, and I'm not going to be the health and safety police, but it is really important just to prep up, because the weather, although it looks absolutely glorious today, can change very, very quickly. So that's one of the things to do if you're coming up into the hills, particularly if you're fishing and you don't do it very often. Prep up. Now you'll see my pack. I've almost certainly got far too much stuff in here. I've got a couple of sets of waders, boots, etc, etc, etc. So you don't necessarily need all of that stuff, but there are some basic things that you really do need to bring with you. The first one is a decent set of boots. One of the biggest things that happens up here is people twist their ankles because obviously the floor isn't particularly flat. So get yourself a decent set of boots, and then layers. Shirt, nice t-shirt, outer layer, coat over the top, waterproofs as well. When the mist comes in, it can be really, really damp. And it's amazing, when that cloud drops, it can soak you very, very quickly. And the last thing you want to do is get stuck up here. Other very basic things. Firstly, tell someone where you're going and try and stick to your route. And secondly, remember your route. Know where you're going up and where you're coming back down again. So at least you've got bearings, because if the weather does come down, it can be pretty tricky up here, I can tell you that. And even though it's just a steady mountain in Wales, actually, when the weather turns, it can be quite tricky. Food, drink, go without saying. Make sure you hydrate yourselves when it's hot, bit of sun cream too. But the most important thing, common sense, don't put yourself in dangerous situations, and also just enjoy the day out.
So here we are on the first mountain lake. This is Llyn cum Corsiog, and as we've been walking up the side of it, we've actually just seen a couple of fish rising. I've just seen one pop up here. So who could resist a cast on the way past? Although it's not our target lake, we thought, what the hell, we'll get out there, have half a dozen casts, because I think we can pick up a quick couple of fish. As you can see down there where that rock is, it's a great spot there where there's a bit of a promontory coming out into the lake. So the food is getting funneled down by the wind. And as I say, we've seen a couple of fish popping up here and there. So I've rigged up the rod. This is a 10-foot 6-weight multi-piece rod with a little cockabondi wet fly. And on the top dropper, I've put a sedge hog, which is a semi-dry pattern. It's quite buoyant. So with the fish rising, that should keep the flies up in the water. But yeah, we're going to give it a quick go. Just a few casts before we move on. Winkle out a couple of nice wild trout. sometimes a change in the light conditions can make all the difference. So, you know, with the cloud coming over, sunlight changing on the water, I mean, that can sometimes change how the fish is looking at the flies, and all of a sudden you'll get a take. So I've just cast right onto a rise. Oh, missed him there, so he just tugged at the fly. But what often happens is he'll come back for another go. So if I'm quick, get the flies back out there straight onto him. Oh, and we're in. There we go. So we've had a lot of pulls and plucks on the flies, and as I suspected, these are small mountain trout. That's probably why they're missing the flies. They're really small, but very welcome nevertheless to kick the day off. And the lake we're heading to, further up the valley there, has got some much bigger fish, so hopefully we'll get into the action there. So look at that, perfectly formed Welsh mountain trout.
Right, we're at the head of the Cwmorthyn Valley. We just passed Cwmorthyn slate mines down there, and we're heading up to Rhosreid slate quarries. They were major quarries in the Blaen y Ffestiniog area. They're called quarries when really they were mines, because when you go past them you'll find all adits where they mined into the mountains, opening up big caverns. But I've read that they called quarries simply because the safety regulations on quarries were less stringent than if they were mines. That's what I've been told. The Cwmorthyn was known as the slaughterhouse. Simply, well, you can use your own imagination to work out why, because working in them was exceedingly dangerous. The miners who worked in these quarries, their main passion very often was going to chapel and then coming up to the mountains fishing. And they would come up on a Friday night, and very often they'd fish overnight because that's the only time they had. A lot of the lakes I belonged to the Cambrai and fly fishing had huts on them where the miners would stay overnight and fish. And really, North Wales Lakes is a spiritual home of llyn fishing in Wales. So to come up here really is a pilgrimage. I like to use the old traditional flies. They develop sort of patterns of flies for these mountain lakes unique to the area. They tended to be very dark, sombre flies, and they're quite famous for that. That people in more sort of gentler climes would turn their nose up, but these are flies that worked. There's all sorts of stories about the lady who goes to chapel with a nice new feathers in the back of her hat, but when she leaves the chapel, a couple of the feathers are missing because they look particularly attractive for making fishing flies. Some of the flies were kept really secret. No one would tell them what they are or what they were made of, and so on and so on. So there's great history, great stories just in the patterns of North Wales. I've tied them and I just love using them, because to me it's paying homage to these tough men who lived hard lives, and their pleasure was getting up into the hills. And luckily it remains my pleasure. I can't get up here enough.
Croeso I Bysgota Cymru. Welcome to Fishing in Wales.
Right, this is the second lake. It's a natural lake, but it's been raised in the past for water for the quarries down below. Since the quarries have gone, they've reduced the water, so now it's back to its normal levels. It's a very, very pretty lake, very weedy, and it's full of beautifully speckled brown trout. We are sat here and we can see them rising all over the place. So we're giving it a go. Well, there we go. Well, you wouldn't believe it, but second cast, I had one fish. When I brought it in, lo and behold, there were two on the end of the line. Can't fault that.
So Rob, we've got you kitted up on the fly rod now.
Yep.
Seems the fish are in the mood. So we've put on a 10-foot rod with a 6-weight line. 2 traditional wet flies. I've put a Wickham's Fancy on the point and a Blue Zulu on the dropper. Oh!
That was a good one as well.
That was a good fish.
I was about to look at you to say, what's a Wickham's Fancy? We better just check that, because that hit that really hard then.
Yeah, let's have a look.
I reckon that might have done me.
We're doing all right so far, aren't we? You know, the fish are taking the flies.
Absolutely.
And you just missed a good take then, didn't you, on the on the fly?
100%. But the reward is the fish, but actually the enjoyment, I've got to say, is the journey as well, because it's been such an incredible journey coming up here. What we've seen, the history of this area, the weather conditions are beautiful now as well. It's windy, of course.
Yeah, well, that's not too bad. Sometimes a nice breeze like this is good for the fishing as well.
Right, well, the fish seem to be rising on the surface. So I've got a surface fly on the dropper, so it skims through the surface of the water, and then a spider pattern on the point. Sometimes the disturbance of the surface fly will attract the fish, but they'll take the point fly. You know, you can never tell. But just retrieving slowly. Don't have to cast far, because they're just off there. And then we'll see what happens. A lovely red spotted speckled brown trout from llyn Corsiog.
So here we are, we've made it to the top of the Mulwins, and what an incredible day we're having so far. Adventures, we've even caught some fish too, lovely bit of history, but just what a place. In front of me, just a spectacular view across to the Arran Mountains. Over to the right hand side, it opens out into the Irish Sea. Behind me, that incredible peak up there, that's Snowdon. We're in the middle of Snowdonia. That is Snowdon, the biggest mountain in England and Wales. But our holy grail is here, just over this crest. This is Conlog. I tell you what, it's a fair old trek up here, guys. It's worth every single ounce of pain, every single ounce of effort, and every breath that you take on the way up, because it is quite simply breathtaking. So Ceri, he's been like Speedy Gonzales all day. He's been leaving us behind because he just wants to settle a score.
Yeah.
Go on, mate, crack on it. Let's go and have it.
Pity about the company, but otherwise.
Well, we're finally here. We're at llyn Conlog, and this is one of the highest lakes in Wales that you can fish for trout. In fact, it's probably the largest lake, over 2,000 feet in Wales. So we're raring to go get down there, catch a couple of trout. But if you're thinking of coming up fishing lakes like this, remember that they're owned by angling clubs for the most part. So do your research, find out where you can get your tickets from online, and remember you're going to need your rod fishing license as well, just so you're legal if you wanted to give it a go. So this particular lake is run by the Cambrian Angling Association. It's a local club based around the Festiniog area, and they've had fishing on these lakes for nearly 150 years, I believe. So it's a fantastic club with 14 different lakes for you to try. The tickets, there's a variety of places you can buy them, such as local outlets and also online. The Fishing Passport, run by the Wyonusk Foundation, allows you to book your tickets, which is a really good way to get up on the hills without wasting any time. You can go to the Angling Club's website, that's the Cambrian Angling Association, or there's more information on the Fishing Wales website, which is www.fishingwales.net. So when you're looking at to fish a lake like this, I mean, you've got to sort of decide where you're going to try. I like to break it down into little areas, so you've got all these little marginal areas, nice little features like that weed bed there, and the fish tend to be surprisingly close in on lakes like this, so it always pays to concentrate in the margins. Other areas to look for are where the wind is blowing off the bank and you get wind lanes where the insects are being trapped in the surface. Also points and peninsulas. I can see down there's a great big wall with a load of heather and there's a big point at the end of it, and there'll definitely be like insects caught at the end of that in a wind lane. So those would be the main areas really to concentrate, and the important thing is just to keep moving as well, you know, just work your way up the bank, covering that fresh water almost every cast, because if there's a fish there, he'll pop up and have a go.
The other two lads are flying around the lake with fly rods, and I've actually brought a spinning rod up. You're allowed to spin here as well, which just adds another dimension to what we can do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow Ceri round. He's going to work the flies through this first bay first, and I'm going to follow through with a spinner. And it is literally just bog standard spinning, really, really straightforward. I've got size 1 Blue Fox brass, really standard, quite frankly as simple as you can get. You don't need anything too flashy here, and it is very, very basic spin fishing. 10 gram to 20 gram rod, small reel, braid on it just to fill the bites, a little bit of fluorocarbon on the end, and all I'm doing is casting out in a fan and working it all the way through, and it's a steady retrieve. Well, I've had 2 fans around with the spinner, one over there and another one over here, and not had anything at all yet. And just looking at it in the water, although it gives me a slightly different option, I think at the moment the fish aren't quite aggressive enough. The weather's not right, or the light conditions isn't quite right for them to really hit that spinner hard. And also I don't really know what the fish are like in here yet, so I've not seen any. So I'm going to go back to the more traditional method that the guys have been using, which is down, you know, on the other lake as well, and just go onto the fly and see if this does anything. And we're in. Hey, there he is. Oh, it's a good one. Now, the lads have disappeared with the rod, so I'm going to have to hand land this one. Oh my word. That is ace. That has hit the point fly. Oh, look at that. What an incredible fish. Come on, baby, don't come off. Come on. That is beautiful. And anybody that trout fishes is going to know what I mean by this, because it's a wild brownie from an upland lake like this. Oh, it's giving it some. Oh, they scrap. Oh, man. That is just incredible, and the changeover is exactly what's needed. I'm just going to try and bank him here. Oh, let's have him in. Look at that. Well, wow, just look at that. Look at the colours on it. Purpley black. And it just goes to show that one little tactical change made all the difference there. I'd run the spinner through that place and just not had anything. and then pop the fly back through, and lo and behold, this beauty came to play, and that has absolutely made my day.
Discover fishing in Wales